Mom, we need to talk about your future. You need to have your own place, a more suitable space for a woman your age. That's what my daughter Sarah told me. It was a normal Tuesday, just after lunch when the sunlight usually streamed into my bedroom. I remember she was standing by my dressing table, the one my dear husband, Robert, gave me all those years ago. She was picking up my favorite little glass bottles, rearranging my perfumes, almost as if she were tidying up my life for me. She had this smile, a polite one, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Those eyes, the same ones I looked into when she was just a baby, were cold, distant. She talked about a little place, a more suitable space. It felt so strange to hear those words in this house, my house, this place, these walls. They aren't just bricks and mortar to me. This has been my world for nearly 50 years. This is where I raised Sarah and her brother, Michael. It's where Robert and I built our dreams, one happy memory at a time. It's where I lived, really lived, every single day. And here she was, talking about a little place as if this home meant nothing, as if I meant nothing here anymore. Her voice was gentle, almost sweet, but the message was a punch to the gut. What she really meant was simple, brutal even. Your time here is over. It wasn't a question she was asking. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a verdict. It was a cold, hard declaration. My son Michael was there too. He stood a bit behind Sarah, leaned against the doorframe, scrolling on his phone. He barely looked up. He just kept his eyes fixed on the screen, like he was trying to disappear, to be invisible. He couldn't meet my gaze, and that hurt. It really hurt. When he finally did speak, his words were even colder, more detached. He mumbled something about tax benefits, about how the house was a fine inheritance and needed to be taken care of. Inheritance. He used that word. It hung in the air, heavy and dark. Inheritance. It felt like he was talking about me as if I were already gone, as if my entire life, everything I had built within these walls, could already be sorted out, calculated, and divided up between them. In that moment, I didn't feel the anger I thought I should feel. Not at first, anyway. Instead, a strange, creeping chill ran right down my spine. It was a cold, quiet dread. It was the chill of a dawning realization. To the two people I loved most in this world, my own children, I had become a problem. Not a person, not their mother, but a problem to be solved. An inconvenience. An old, worn-out piece of furniture that needed to be moved, relocated somewhere out of the way. It was a silent humiliation. They were so busy talking about my future, but they weren't talking to me about it. They were talking about me, in front of me, deciding for me. They told me I had 2 weeks. 2 weeks to think about it. But the decision, I knew, had already been made by them. For me, there was no discussion, no room for my opinion. They had simply presented their conclusion. They left the room, then, after their little pronouncement, leaving me there alone, in my bedroom, surrounded by all the familiar things that suddenly felt so alien. My perfumes, still slightly disarranged, on the dressing table, the old lace curtains fluttering gently in the breeze. Everything seemed to mock me, to whisper that this was no longer my sanctuary. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly guess, was that at that exact instant, another decision was being made, a far more powerful decision. It wasn't about where they would put me. It was about something much deeper. A spark, a tiny flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long, long time, was igniting inside me. A quiet resolve. It was like a forgotten ember, finally catching fire. They thought they had given me a deadline to leave, but in truth, they had just given me a reason to act, a reason to stand up for myself. For the very first time, in a way I hadn't needed to in years, the house felt quiet, but the silence of their departure was deafening, yet it held the echo of a new, unexpected strength. My name is Helena. I'm 72 years old. 72 years of living, of breathing, of making. My hands, they've always been busy. For most of my life, I was a seamstress. Not a grand designer, just a woman who loved fabric and thread, who found beauty in putting things together, piece by piece. My work was honest, steady. It built this house. My life, it was never about luxury, never about big trips or shiny cars or fancy clothes, but it was always full of meaning. Every single stitch I made, every seam I pressed, it all contributed to something real. It built this home. These walls aren't just bricks and mortar to me. This place, this house, it's where I lived. Truly lived. I'm the one who chose that specific shade of light yellow paint for the living room walls. I wanted more sunshine inside, even on the cloudiest days, a warmth that filled the air. And the old wooden floor in the living room? After that big flood we had years ago, I spent weeks redoing it myself, plank by plank. I can still feel the ache in my back, the splinters in my fingers, but oh, the satisfaction of seeing it smooth and clean again. Every inch of this house holds a piece of me, a piece of my effort. And the garden? Oh, my roses. I planted every single one in the front garden bed. Every bush, every delicate bloom was placed with care. I spoke to them, like they were old friends, whispered little secrets to them as I watered them in the morning dew. And they always bloomed, always, as if they understood my effort, my quiet love for them. They were my quiet companions, a splash of vibrant life against the yellow walls. In this house, I cooked thousands of meals, countless Sunday roasts, birthday cakes with too much frosting, simple weekday dinners that nourished my family. The aroma of garlic and onions, the sizzle of butter in the pan, those were the everyday sounds of my love. I paid every single bill on time with the money from my sewing. Every last penny was accounted for, used to keep this place running, to keep my family safe and warm. And I raised my 2 children here, Sarah, my daughter, and Michael, my son. I raised them both within these walls, with a patience that only a mother's love can truly teach. I remember their laughter echoing in the hallways, their little footsteps on these very floors. I never asked for anything in return, not even a simple thank you. My payment was seeing their happiness, watching them grow, become adults, make their own way in the world. That was enough for me, more than enough. My late husband Robert and I, We made a great effort for them, for their future. We sacrificed so much to buy this house. It was our biggest dream, our greatest achievement together. The deed? It was always my greatest pride. A symbol of everything we built. It's still there, tucked away in an old leather folder, hidden deep in the back of my wardrobe. Clean, impeccable. Our legacy, our shared accomplishment. I've always been a woman of simple routines. Nothing grand, nothing complicated. Just the things that bring quiet joy and a sense of order to my days. I love the smell of freshly brewed coffee in the morning, that rich, warm scent filling the kitchen, a promise of a new day. I love the sound of the birds outside my window, especially the sparrows, chirping their little greetings as the sun comes up, and caring for my plants, watering them, talking to them as if they could understand. These little things, they were my world, my calm, my rhythm, my peace. My life was my home. This house, it wasn't just a building. It was my fortress, the place where I believed I would be safe until my very last day. I truly believed that I would live out my years here, surrounded by the memories, by the quiet comfort of everything I had built. It was my sanctuary, my safe harbor, my haven. The one place in the world where I felt completely myself, completely secure. But what I didn't know then, what I hadn't even begun to understand, was that sometimes the greatest threats, the most painful ones, they aren't outside your walls. They're already on the inside, quietly, insidiously, right there with you, eating away at everything you hold dear. It was a truth I was about to learn, a hard, bitter truth that would change everything. It was a truth I was about to learn, a hard, bitter truth that would change everything. It started so quietly, so subtly, like a whisper you almost miss. At first, I didn't even notice, or maybe I didn't want to. I loved my children, Sarah and Michael. I trusted them. But things began to shift, just little things here and there. My daughter, Sarah, she started visiting less. Not that she stopped coming altogether, no. But her visits, they felt different, shorter. She used to sit with me. We'd have tea, talk about our day. Now, she was always busy, always in a hurry, and when she did come, she'd look around. Not at me, not at the old photos, but at the house itself. She'd say things like, "Mom, why don't you get rid of these old pieces of furniture? A more modern design would give the house a different feel." Her voice was always soft when she said it, too soft, as if she was trying to be gentle, but the words felt sharp, like tiny needles. Then she started doing things without asking. She'd just walk into a room and start organizing. She'd pick up a little ceramic bird one Robert, my late husband, gave me on our 20th anniversary, and move it to a different shelf. Or my collection of thimbles, arranged just so, next to my sewing machine. She'd put them in a drawer. My heart would clench. Those weren't just objects. They were memories, pieces of my life. And she was moving them, putting them away. It felt like she was trying to erase my marks from the house, little by little, as if she was preparing the space for someone else, or for no one at all. My son, Michael, he changed too. He stopped calling just to ask how I was doing. You know, a simple, "How are you, Mom?" Those calls used to mean so much. Now, when he called, it was always about money. Always. About the increase in property taxes, about the costs of house maintenance. He'd talk about the roof or the old water heater. He spoke with this tone of concern, like he was worried about me. But it sounded more like a complaint, a quiet grumble. I started to feel it then, a cold, heavy feeling settling in my stomach. I felt like a financial burden, an unexpected expense on his life spreadsheet, like I was a problem that cost too much to keep around. And the dining table. Oh, that table. It used to be the heart of our home. So much laughter, so many stories shared. Sunday lunches, they were a ritual, a messy, joyful, loud ritual. But gradually that table became empty. The chairs sat vacant. Sunday lunches became rare. And when they did happen, my children would whisper, their heads close together, full of plans. Plans I wasn't part of. Plans I couldn't hear. I'd sit there, at my own table, listening to the murmurs, and feel like I was invisible, like I was already gone. That's when the loneliness started to creep in, a silent ache. Not the kind that makes you cry out loud. No, it was deeper than that. A quiet, constant throb behind my ribs. It hurt more than any shout, any argument, because it was the pain of absence. The absence of connection, of being seen. I used to be Helena, the mother, the seamstress, the lady of this house. But slowly, imperceptibly, I was becoming a stranger in my own story and in my own home. It was like I was watching my life unfold, but from outside the window. Cold, distant, and I didn't know what to do or who to be anymore. I was becoming a stranger in my own story and in my own home. It was like I was watching my life unfold, but from outside the window. Cold, distant, and I didn't know what to do or who to be anymore. Then the final blow came. It was a Tuesday. I remember that clearly because the rain was falling hard outside. A gray, relentless rain, matching the ache that had settled in my chest. Sarah and Michael came into the living room, where I was sitting by the window, watching the drops race down the glass. They didn't sit in their usual spots, not like old times. They sat across from me, on the sofa, both with these serious, calculated expressions. Their faces were too calm, too composed, like they were reading from a script. Sarah was holding something in her hands, a brochure. She held it out, just slightly, like she was presenting me with a gift. She had that same forced smile I'd seen before, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes. Those eyes, they looked at me, but I felt like they were looking through me at something else entirely. She opened the brochure, a glossy page showing a bright, modern room with a bed and a small table. "Mom," she started, her voice a little too bright, a little too cheerful for a rainy Tuesday. "We found a perfect place for you. It's beautiful, really." She tapped the page with a perfectly manicured finger. "Look, it has so many activities, and there are 24-hour nurses, which will be so much safer. And you'll be able to make new friends, Mom. You'll have company. It's much more appropriate for you now. Appropriate. The word hung in the air, heavy and full of unspoken meaning. Appropriate for an old woman who couldn't take care of herself anymore. That's what she meant. Appropriate for someone who was no longer useful, no longer quite right for her own home. My eyes drifted from the brochure to Michael. He nodded, once, a short, sharp movement of his head. He completed her thought as if they had rehearsed this. "And Mom, we need to sell the house," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "It's time to sort everyone's lives out. The real estate market is really favorable right now, and we can't miss this opportunity." He said opportunity like it was a grand prize. And then he said it again, that word, inheritance. But this time it wasn't just detached. It was urgent, as if my lifespan, my very existence, was a ticking clock. An obstacle to their plans, to their opportunity. They didn't ask me what I wanted. Not once. They didn't say, "Mom, what do you think?" Or, "Are you happy here?" No. They simply presented me with the solution, the one they had already decided for me. It was like they were discussing a problem that needed to be neatly packaged and put away. And I was the problem. The house was just a part of it. The humiliation. It was silent. It was definitive. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. There was no fight in me, not then, no argument that felt like it would make any difference. There was only the certainty in their eyes. The cold, unwavering certainty that I was a closed chapter, a story finished. To them, I had already ended. They told me I had 2 weeks. 2 weeks to organize my things, as if my life, all 72 years of it, could be neatly folded into boxes and moved to a new, sterile room. 2 weeks to prepare for my expulsion from the only home I'd known for 50 years. In that moment, watching them, hearing their calm, decisive words, I understood something deep and utterly heartbreaking. To them, I was no longer their mother. I was no longer Helena, the lady of this house, the one who painted the walls, who planted the roses, who built a life within these very walls. I was just the last obstacle, the last piece standing in their way for them to move forward. And they were ready to sweep me aside. I felt the cold realization sink deep into my bones. And for a moment, just a moment, I didn't know what would happen next. And for a moment, just a moment, I didn't know what would happen next. But then, something strange happened. As Sarah and Michael sat there, their faces so stern, so final, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even argue. There was no point. Their minds were already made up. Instead, I just nodded my head, once, a small, almost imperceptible movement. And as I nodded, an unexpected calm settled over me. It wasn't the calm of giving up, not at all. It was a clarity, a deep, quiet certainty that bloomed right there in my chest. They saw me, I knew, as a fragile old woman, someone dependent, someone who could simply be moved from one place to another like an old vase or a forgotten coat. They thought they had me cornered. They thought they had decided my future. They thought I was broken. But they forgot. They truly forgot who they were talking to. They forgot the woman who, piece by piece, stitch by stitch, built all of this. This house. This life. They forgot Helena, their mother. But more than that, they forgot the Helena who knew how to survive, how to fight, even when no one was looking. The Helena who had always found a way. That night, sleep didn't come, but it wasn't because I was sad. It wasn't because I was heartbroken, though the ache was still there, a dull throb. No, it was because my mind was racing, not with despair, but with planning, with a quiet, simmering resolve that felt like a forgotten ember suddenly catching fire. I got out of bed slowly. The old floorboards creaked under my bare feet, a familiar sound in the quiet house. I walked to my wardrobe, the one Robert, my late husband, had built for me with his own hands so many years ago. It smelled faintly of cedar and lavender. I reached to the very back, where it was always hidden, almost forgotten, yet always there. My fingers found the worn leather folder, the one that held our history, our dreams. I pulled it out carefully. It felt heavy in my hands. I walked over to the small lamp on my bedside table and turned it on, casting a soft glow. My hands trembled just a little as I opened the folder. And there it was, the deed to the house, clean, impeccable, just as I remembered it, solely in my name and Robert's. Our names, the names of the people who had poured their lives into these walls. The document that proved, beyond any doubt, that this house was not a future inheritance to be divided among them. It was my present, my asset, my choice. Still, as I held that deed, a wave of strength washed over me, a power I hadn't felt in years, the kind of clear-eyed determination that comes when you've been pushed to the very edge. They had given me 2 weeks to leave, 2 weeks to organize my things, but I would use that time. Oh, I would use it, not to pack for their chosen destination, but to ensure my departure was on my terms, not theirs, never theirs. I walked over to the small phone table in the hallway. My fingers, steady now, found the familiar numbers. It was a real estate agent. A friend from my sewing circle had recommended her years ago. Said she was fair and very discreet. I hadn't thought I'd ever need her services. Not really. But life, it has a funny way of surprising you. I picked up the receiver. My voice, when I spoke, was firm, clear. Not the voice of a fragile old woman, but the voice of Helena, the one who built, and now the one who would decide. My answer wouldn't be with words. Not anymore. It would be with an action, a decisive one, and it would start right now. My answer wouldn't be with words, it would be with an action, a decisive one, and it would start right now. In the days that followed, the pressure mounted. I could feel it, a heavy weight settling over the house, a constant hum of expectation in the air. Sarah became a whirlwind of activity. She started bringing cardboard boxes, big ones, small ones. She'd place them neatly in the corner of the living room, near the old fireplace, stacking them higher each day. "To help you pack your things, Mom," she'd say, her voice dripping with what she must have thought was kindness. But it felt thin, fake, like a costume she was wearing. Every box felt like a small, silent accusation, a countdown. Michael, for his part, was always on the phone, and he wasn't trying to hide it. Not anymore. He'd stand right there, in front of me, in the living room, in the very space where we had shared so many family moments. He'd be talking to an architect, openly, loudly, discussing how they would renovate the property to increase its value. He talked about new walls, open concepts, modern finishes. He talked about my house, the one I had lived in for 50 years, as if it were just a piece of land to be exploited, a commodity. They acted as if I were invisible, a ghost already, waiting for the time to leave. Every single one of their gestures was a small stab at my dignity. I would walk into the kitchen, the place where I had prepared countless meals for them, and find Sarah there, measuring the space for a new refrigerator. Her tape measure would snap back with a sharp sound, a sound that echoed in my chest. She'd hum a little tune, completely oblivious, or so she seemed, to the woman standing right there, watching her measure out her new life in my old home, my kitchen. It felt like she was planning a party and I wasn't invited. Worse, I was the guest who had overstayed her welcome. Another day, I'd be in the living room, trying to read a book, and I'd hear Michael on the phone again. He was telling a friend, excitedly, how he would finally have a spacious office. A home office in this house, my late husband Robert's study, the one he loved, the one I had kept just as he left it. Michael was planning to turn it into his new workspace, as if I were already gone, as if my memories, my history had no claim. They weren't just kicking me out, they were erasing my existence, bit by bit, before I had even left, before I had even taken a single step out the door. I remained silent through it all. I just observed. I watched them. I let them believe they had complete control. I let them think I was the poor, defeated old woman, the one who had no fight left, no choice. Their smugness grew with each passing day, each measurement, each phone call, each cardboard box placed in the corner. They thought they had won. They truly did. But inside, something else was happening. Something quiet, but incredibly powerful. My decisions strengthened with each new humiliation. Every time Sarah brought another box, every time Michael talked about a renovation, my resolve hardened like steel. They wanted the house. They wanted to get rid of me. Then I would give them exactly what they deserved. Not what they expected, what they deserved. My complete absence from their lives and from this house. My complete absence from their lives and from this house. The second week had ended, just as they had demanded. Every day had felt like an eternity, filled with the rustle of cardboard and the echo of their plans. But I had my own plans. And now it was time. I summoned Sarah and Michael for a conversation. I didn't raise my voice. I simply called them from the living room, a quiet request for their presence. They walked in, both of them, with expressions that spoke of finality, like they were about to close a deal. They probably expected me to be defeated, to have given in, to be ready to agree to that senior living facility. Their faces held a smug satisfaction, a quiet triumph. They thought they had won. I was sitting on the sofa, right where I always sat, calm. In front of me, on the old coffee table, the one Robert had sanded down himself, I placed a small, plain cardboard box. Nothing special, no grand flourish. Just a simple box. "I've made a decision," I said, my voice steady. It surprised me how steady it was. A decision about my future, and about the future of this house. They exchanged glances, those little smiles playing on their lips. They thought they knew what was coming. I could see it in their eyes. They imagined me saying I was tired, that I understood, that it was for the best. They were practically radiating victory. Michael even shifted his weight, as if preparing to clap me on the shoulder, a gesture of faux comfort. And then, just at that perfect moment, the doorbell rang. It was almost too perfect, a little theatrical even, but life sometimes truly writes the best scripts. I didn't ask them to get it. I didn't hesitate. I got up from the sofa, my movements slow, deliberate, and walked to the front door. I opened it myself. Standing on my porch, under the gray sky, was a woman I knew, dressed smartly, my real estate agent, and beside her, a couple. They looked kind, friendly, a little nervous maybe, but with warmth in their eyes. They smiled at me. I smiled back, stepped aside, inviting them in. "Sarah, Michael," I said, my voice clear and calm. "I'd like you to meet someone." My children were still standing there, frozen by the sofa, watching. Their smiles had faltered just a little, a hint of confusion starting to cloud their faces. "These are the new owners of the house," I announced. My gaze swept over them, letting the words sink in. The triumph on their faces shattered. It truly did. It crumbled into pure, unadulterated confusion, like a delicate glass falling to the floor. Michael, especially. He stood up straight, stiffly, as if someone had pulled a string. His eyes, wide now, darted from the couple to me and back again. "What do you mean?" he stammered, his voice losing all its earlier composure. "What do you mean, new owners?" Sarah said nothing. She just stared, her mouth slightly open. Her mind, I could almost hear it, struggling to catch up, to process what she was hearing. This wasn't in their plan. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I walked back to the coffee table. I picked up the small box. It was a simple, sturdy little box. I opened it. Inside, neatly folded, was the sales contract. A pristine, official document. I held it up, not waving it, just presenting it for them to see. "The house," I began, my voice still calm, but with an underlying strength that surprised even me. It was always in my name, and Robert's. It was my asset, not your inheritance. Not yet, anyway. I let that settle, and I decided to sell it. Their faces were a mixture of shock and dawning horror. They looked at the contract, then at me, then at the friendly couple standing awkwardly by the door. No shouts, no arguments, just silence. A heavy, devastating silence, the kind that screams louder than any words, the truth The harsh, undeniable reality of their greed had just hit them. It wasn't revenge I was seeking, it was justice, my freedom, and it tasted sweeter than anything I could have imagined. I used the money, I continued, my gaze holding theirs, to start my life over, in a place where I truly feel at home, where I'm respected, where I'm wanted. Their eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, like statues. They had spent weeks trying to erase me, to move me, to control my future. But in the end, it was I who held the pen, I who signed the papers, I who held the power. And I had used it to set myself free. I watched them, their faces pale, lost, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, completely in control of my own story. And I had used it to set myself free. I watched them, their faces pale, lost, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt truly, completely in control of my own story. Before leaving, I left 2 envelopes on the coffee table. One for Sarah, one for Michael. I didn't write long letters. No accusations, no anger. Just a few lines in my own handwriting. I simply wrote that the greatest value of a home isn't in its walls or in the land it sits on. It's in the respect shared inside those walls. And that, I wrote, was something they had forgotten. They had forgotten it completely. I didn't wait for them to read them. I didn't want to see their reactions. There was nothing left to say. I closed the door of that house for the very last time. It had been my home for nearly 50 years. The place where I raised my children, where I loved my husband, where I stitched a life together. But as the latch clicked shut, I didn't feel a heavy heart. No, I felt a lightness. The lightness of someone who had finally, truly chosen herself. For the first time in a very long time, I put myself first. And it felt like breathing fresh air after being trapped in a stuffy room. Today, I live in a small rented apartment. It's in Maui, Hawaii. Can you believe it? My life took a turn I never, ever expected. The view from my window here is so different. It's no longer of my perfectly tended rose garden, no. It's of the infinite ocean, vast, blue, stretching out forever. Sometimes I just sit and watch the waves. The sound is like a lullaby. My routine here is simple, unhurried. I wake up early, not to a clock, but to the sun rising over the water. I walk on the beach, my bare feet sinking into the warm sand. I chat with the local fishermen as they bring in their catch. They have stories that are as endless as the ocean itself. I've even learned to weave with the women of the island. Their hands are so skilled, and their laughter is infectious. It's a completely different kind of stitching, one that fills my days with calm. I don't have luxury here, not in the way Sarah and Michael might define it. There are no grand rooms, no fancy cars. But I have something money can't buy. I have peace of mind, a deep, quiet peace that settles in my soul every single day. I exchanged a large house full of painful memories and unspoken expectations for a small place, a place where I build new memories, peaceful ones, every single day. The journey wasn't an escape, you know? It wasn't about running away. It was a return a return to myself. I discovered that my place in the world wasn't a house with yellow walls and a rose garden. It wasn't a structure. My place is wherever I feel free, wherever I feel respected. And here, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, right here, I finally feel at home. Truly, deeply, at peace. And here, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, right here, I finally feel at home. Truly, deeply, at peace. It's a peace I fought for, you know, a peace forged in the fires of pain and injustice. When I look out at this vast ocean, I think about everything that brought me here, the sting of feeling unwanted, the quiet humiliation, the cold realization that my own children saw me as a burden. It was a kind of pain I never imagined I'd feel. Not from them. It was the injustice of being stripped of my dignity, piece by piece. Right there, in the home I had built with my own hands, with so much love. But that pain, that deep, quiet ache, it taught me something invaluable. It taught me that my value, my worth, wasn't tied to that house or to their approval. It wasn't something they could take away from me or decide had an expiration date. No, my value, my dignity, that was mine. It always had been. And it was up to me to protect it, to reclaim it. Even when it felt like the whole world, even my own family, was trying to tell me I was used up, obsolete. This new beginning, here in Maui, it isn't just a change of scenery. It's a complete rebirth of self. It's learning to breathe again, to trust my own instincts, to listen to the quiet voice inside that says, "You matter. Your desires matter. Your peace matters." I'm not running from the past. Not really. I'm simply choosing to live a present where I am respected, where I am seen, and where I can grow. Even at 72, especially at 72. And you? Have you ever felt your story being erased within your own home by those you loved most? Have you ever been treated as if your value had an expiration date? Maybe not exactly like me, maybe not about a house, but in some way that chipped away at who you are. It's a universal feeling. I think this fear of becoming invisible, of being cast aside, of being told without words that your time is over. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, whether you're a mother, a father, a friend, a neighbor. Our dignity isn't something others give us. It's not a gift from the outside. It's an inner flame. It's something we ourselves have to protect, fiercely and lovingly, no matter our age, no matter the circumstances. We have to stand up for ourselves, even when our knees feel weak. We have to speak our truth, even when our voice trembles. For so long, I believed my purpose was to serve, to care, to give everything of myself. And I don't regret that. My children, my home, they were my world. But I learned in the hardest way that sometimes giving everything means forgetting to keep something for yourself. The most important thing. Your sense of self, your own sacred space within. My journey taught me that respect is a two-way street, and if it's not offered freely, then sometimes you have to create a new path where it flows. It's not about blame, not anymore. It's about understanding that every human being, regardless of their age or their perceived usefulness, deserves to be treated with kindness, with consideration, with a recognition of their inherent worth. Especially as we grow older, society often tries to dim our light, to categorize us, to tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing. But we are still vibrant. We still have dreams. We still have stories to tell, and we still deserve to live them fully. So, as I watch the waves roll in, a new day beginning or ending, I remind myself my story isn't over. My value hasn't diminished, and I am finally living on my own terms. It's a feeling of profound peace, a quiet, deep knowing that I am exactly where I need to be, and that my voice, even if it's just a whisper now, is still strong. It's a peace I fought for, a peace forged in the fires of pain and injustice. When I look out at this vast ocean, I think about everything that brought me here. The sting of feeling unwanted, the quiet humiliation, the cold realization that my own children saw me as a burden. It was a kind of pain I never imagined I'd feel, not from them. It was the injustice of being stripped of my dignity, piece by piece, right there in the home I had built with my own hands, with so much love. But that pain, that deep, quiet ache, it taught me something invaluable. It taught me that my value, my worth, wasn't tied to that house or to their approval. It wasn't something they could take away from me or decide had an expiration date. No, my value, my dignity, that was mine. It always had been. And it was up to me to protect it, to reclaim it. Even when it felt like the whole world, even my own family, was trying to tell me I was used up, obsolete. This new beginning, here in Maui, it isn't just a change of scenery. It's a complete rebirth of self. It's learning to breathe again, to trust my own instincts, to listen to the quiet voice inside that says, "You matter. Your desires matter. Your peace matters." I'm not running from the past, not really. I'm simply choosing to live a present where I am respected, where I am seen, and where I can grow. Even at 72, especially at 72. And you? Have you ever felt your story being erased within your own home by those you loved most? Have you ever been treated as if your value had an expiration date? Maybe not exactly like me, maybe not about a house, but in some way that chipped away at who you are. It's a universal feeling, I think. This fear of becoming invisible, of being cast aside, of being told without words that your time is over. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, whether you're a mother, a father, a friend, a neighbor. Our dignity isn't something others give us. It's not a gift from the outside. It's an inner flame. It's something we ourselves have to protect, fiercely and lovingly. No matter our age, no matter the circumstances, we have to stand up for ourselves. Even when our knees feel weak, we have to speak our truth. Even when our voice trembles. For so long, I believed my purpose was to serve, to care, to give everything of myself. And I don't regret that. My children, my home, they were my world. But I learned in the hardest way that sometimes giving everything means forgetting to keep something for yourself. The most important thing, your sense of self, your own sacred space within. My journey taught me that respect is a two-way street. And if it's not offered freely, then sometimes You have to create a new path where it flows. It's not about blame, not anymore. It's about understanding that every human being, regardless of their age or their perceived usefulness, deserves to be treated with kindness, with consideration, with a recognition of their inherent worth. Especially as we grow older, society often tries to dim our light, to categorize us, to tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing. But we are still vibrant. We still have dreams. We still have stories to tell, and we still deserve to live them fully. I share my story, not for pity, but for connection. Because real stories, honest stories, they remind us we're not alone. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, pay attention. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and hit the bell icon. So as I watch the waves roll in, a new day beginning or ending, I remind myself, my story isn't over. My value hasn't diminished, and I am finally living on my own terms. It's a feeling of profound peace, a quiet, deep knowing that I am exactly where I need to be, and that my voice, even if it's just a whisper now, is still strong.